Okay, so we're looking at subtracting fractions using regrouping. Our problem is 2 1/6 minus 4/5. And so our first step is to do what? So we're going to find a common denominator, and you guys use an EFT to find a common D. So we're going to do that. So we'll take our fractions here, our 2 1/6 and our 4/5, and we're going to find a common denominator. And you guys do that using an EFT. So first step is EFT. We'll start with our smaller number, so 5, 10, 15, because we're skip counting. And then 20, we're pretty far away from that 6, so 6, 12, 18, 24, we just passed it, so we'll do 25, and then next is 30, and then after 24 would be 30 for the 6. We just found our common denominator. Okay? Now, some of you, your parents, when they're showing you, they don't understand why we do this way, because they do something different, but I'll show you what they do as well. Okay? So now that we found our common denominator, which is 30, we're going to fill out our numerators. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically you're skip counting by whatever the numerator is. You're also skip counting by whatever the denominator is for both problems. Now we have our equivalent fractions. Okay, so I'll just box my equivalent fractions. And I really like that you're making a note and you're doing this along with me so that you know exactly what to do. Okay, so what we have is 2, we can't forget that whole number, 2 and 5/30 minus 24/30. Do we agree?
Yes.
Okay. Can we subtract 24 from 5? No, we cannot. So we'll have to borrow, and borrowing in fractions is just like borrowing when you have whole numbers. It's going to be the same way. So the 2 is going to become a what? 1. So the 2 becomes a 1. And so now that 1 that we borrowed, something needs to happen to it. It needs to be made into a fraction. Okay? So it's going to have the same denominator that you already have. It's going to be 30. And if we're making that 1 into a fraction, 30/30. 30/30 is equivalent to 1. So 1 plus 1 is what? 2. And we're back to our whole number again. Okay? It's important to break 1 down because we need some extra pieces. We don't have enough pieces here to subtract 24. Okay? So, but we can't forget about that 5/30. So we're just going to add that. Okay? Nothing has changed at the bottom, but I do have my 1 whole number. My denominator, what? Stays the same. And then 30 plus 5? 35. Okay. Now, do I have enough at the top to subtract? Yes, I have enough at the top to subtract. So my 24 is at the bottom, 24/30 is at the bottom. All right, so I can say, subtract your fractions first. Your denominator is what?
Stays the same.
Stays the same. It's 30. And then 34, subtract 24. 11. So 5 minus 4 is 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. And then 1, nothing to subtract, would be 1. So 1 and 11/30. Okay? This one, thankfully, does not require being reduced. So this is our final answer. Okay? I'm going to show you another way to do the EFT. This is probably the way your parents know. I'll show you that a little bit later in another way. Okay? But now I'm going to show you how to I'll show you how to do one other problem. So you'll write this one for me. So 4 minus 6/8. 4 minus 6/8. Again, we don't have anything, we have no fraction. So what do we need to do?
reduce it.
We not reduce it, but we have to create a fraction. Okay, we have to regroup. Remember that? So it's not reducing. Reducing is making something smaller. We're not making it smaller. We're just taking it and changing the way one of those holes looks. Okay? All right. And if you want a picture, I could do a picture for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, can we take 6/8 from these holes? No, we have to do what to one of them? Break it down. Break it into pieces. How many pieces? 8, because our 8 is here. Okay? So what I'm going to do is break one of these into pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there's 8. That one hole is broken into 8 pieces. Is it still a hole? Yes, it is still a hole. Okay, so you basically what you have is 1, 2, 3 holes and then 8 eighths. Does that make sense? Okay, so we need to subtract 6/8. And all I'm going to do now is shade in 6 of them. Okay, so let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count your holes. 1, 2, 3. And your what's left? 1, 2. And your denominator is 8. Okay? And then this fraction can be reduced. We have 2 here, and then 2 times 4, 3 and 2, I'm sorry, 1/4. 3 and 1/4. Because the 2 here scratches out, and then you put a 1. Okay, so 3 and 1/4 would be the answer. The way to do this as an algorithm, let's show you here. 4 minus 6/8. You borrow 1 from the 4, it becomes a 3. And the 1 that you borrow, thank you for not having your heads down, making sure your eyes are on the board. The 3 that you have becomes, you're going to break one of the 4 down, the one that you borrowed. We're going to break it down. The denominator has to be the same as what you already have. So what is the denominator going to be? 8. Good job. What's the numerator going to be? 8. Awesome. Now, we still have 4, right? We have 3 holes that have not been cut, and then we have 1 hole that's been cut into 8 pieces. Got it? All right. Now I'm going to subtract my 6/8. 8 take away 6, 2. And then your denominator stays the same. 3, subtract nothing, it's just 3. We got the same answer both times. And then you would just reduce it the same way. And then 2, and then 2 times 4. Scratch out the 2 because we're basically reducing using dividing out that 2. So we got the same answer. All right, so when you're regrouping fractions, when you're subtracting fractions, using regrouping, you have to remember to take one piece, one whole, and cut it into pieces. You're going to cut it into the number of pieces that you have in your denominator. And if you have, like this first one, we had to create an EFT. That was step 1. And then step 2, this is step 2, just making sure it looks the way you want it to look. All right, step 3. Step 3 is to borrow, okay? So step 3 was to borrow 1 and then cut it up. Cut into pieces. Okay? And then the final step here was to then, step 4, was you have to make sure all the pieces are added together. So this is step 4. And then subtracting, which is finishing it, would be step 5. So step 1 was to create an EFT. This is here. Step 2 was to then use those fractions that we got with the EFT. We used the fractions and we couldn't forget about that whole number. Step 3, we needed to borrow 1 because we recognized that we could not subtract 24 from 5. So we borrowed 1 and cut it into pieces. There it is right there, that 30/30ths. We still have 1 here, and the 1 here. So 1 plus 1 is 2. We're back to our original number. That 5/30ths, don't forget that. And then we add them together. 30 plus 5 equals 35 over 30th, over 30. And then we have our 1, we brought it over. And then go ahead and subtract. So that's how those are the steps that we took there. Okay? So this is how you would subtract fractions using regrouping. There are about 5 steps when you have another fraction. When you don't have another fraction, you just take 1, and we showed you how to do it using a picture as well as the algorithm, where we still borrowed 1, broke it up into pieces, and then subtracted normally, and then we reduced. Okay?